When my neighbors tried to trap me on my own property by blocking my driveway with a fence, they thought they were being clever. What they didn't expect was that I'd build an even bigger fence, completely locking them inside their own yard. And that was just the beginning. It all started on a Tuesday morning when I woke up to the sound of hammering and the unmistakable metallic clang of a post driver echoing across my property. The kind of noise that makes you sit up in bed because you just know it's not supposed to be happening. And sure enough, when I stepped outside, still in my slippers with a coffee in hand, there it was, a fresh, ugly, waist-high chain-link fence running across the entrance to my driveway like some sort of defiant barricade, complete with a private property, HOA members-only sign zip-tied to the middle, as if the people putting it up were in charge of my land, which they weren't, not even close. My property sat entirely outside their HOA jurisdiction, something I had legally confirmed years ago after moving here precisely to avoid their nonsense. But that never stopped the president, Karen, yes, that was her real name, and yes, she lived up to it, from trying to flex her paper-thin authority beyond the actual limits of the HOA. And as I watched her and two bored cronies, tightening bolts like they were installing some sacred monument, she turned with that smug, tight-lipped smile she reserved for moments when she thought she was teaching someone a lesson, and announced, without so much as a good morning, per HOA policy, "This driveway is now restricted access until your compliance issues are resolved," which was her twisted way of referring to the fact that I hadn't mowed the wildflower patch along my property line because it was a certified pollinator habitat approved by the state. Not a messy lawn like she claimed, and while my coffee was still too hot to chug, the rage boiling up inside me was hotter. I told her flat out that this was illegal, that she was trespassing, that she had exactly 5 seconds to get off my property before I called the sheriff. But she just sniffed and said, "Go ahead, we've got permits," flashing a stack of papers that I knew couldn't possibly be valid because the county doesn't issue permits for fencing off other people's driveways. And right then I decided two things. One, I wasn't going to just tear this fence down, oh no. That would be too easy and too satisfying for them because it would make me the one escalating. And two, I was going to let them finish. Let them think they'd gotten away with it, because the best revenge isn't loud, it's quiet at first. The kind that slowly tightens the noose until the other person realizes too late they're trapped. So I let her keep building. I even stepped back and said nothing as the posts went in. The gate swung shut with a shiny padlock, and Karen strutted, away in her oversized sun visor like she'd just claimed new territory, muttering to her cronies about showing that guy who's boss, and that's when the real fun began. The first call I made was to the county zoning office, not to complain, but to request a copy of all registered property lines, easements, and rights of way in the area. Paperwork I already had but wanted updated copies of, so there'd be no question when this went to court. And the second call was to my friend Dave, contractor with a specialty in creative fencing solutions and a sense of humor as warped as mine. And when I explained the situation, he burst out laughing and said, "So you want to fence the fencers?" To which I replied, "Not just fence them. I want to seal them in." And that was all he needed to hear. By Wednesday afternoon, we had the supplies: industrial fencing panels, concrete anchors, locking gates, and enough chain to make fort. Knox jealous? And we didn't work under cover of night like some petty vandal crew. No. Started mid-morning Saturday in full daylight, with Karen and half the HOA out watering lawns and gossiping over hedges, because nothing drives home a point like boldness. And the looks on their faces when they saw us unloading steel frames and post drivers onto the very edge of HOA property, their side of the illegal fence, was priceless. Karen came stomping over, her face already flushed red under her visor, barking, "What do you think you're doing? You can't build here." And I just grinned and handed her the county map, pointing to the exact spot where her new fence was sitting, well inside the public easement, effectively blocking an access point not just for me but for emergency services, delivery trucks, and, most deliciously, their own garbage collection, meaning their little blockade was actually a massive HOA violation and a safety hazard. Something that would be on record the moment the county office opened Monday morning. She tried to snatch the paper out of my hand, but I wasn't done, because as far as I was concerned, this was now an art project. We started laying out my fence around theirs. leaving just enough space for a car to fit between the two gates. On either side of my driveway, except that my gates locked from my side only, effectively turning their illegal fence into the first checkpoint of a prison yard they couldn't leave without my say-so. And as I drilled the final anchor into place, the HOA peanut gallery was gathered in a semicircle, phones out. Filming and whispering like this was some sort of scandal, while Karen was practically vibrating with fury, demanding to know how. I thought I could get away with this, to which I calmly replied, "Same way you thought you could. Only difference is, I actually have the law on my side." And judging by the way her jaw clenched, she knew I was right. The cherry on top came later that afternoon, when the sheriff himself, a family friend who'd been hearing my complaints about Karen for years, stopped by to inspect a reported property dispute, took one look at the fence with the new fence situation, and after I explained everything, he shook his head, turned to Karen, and said, "Ma'am, you might want to get your lawyer on the phone, because this isn't looking good for you." Which was the moment I saw the first crack in her confidence. A flicker of doubt that told me she'd finally realized she wasn't the predator in this story. She was the prey, and I wasn't done with her yet, not by a long shot, because fencing them in was just the first move in a game I fully intended to win.